Ethan Caldwell had imagined this moment countless times during sleepless nights overseas, walking back into his Chicago home, hearing familiar footsteps, feeling the quiet comfort that only home could give. As the CEO of one of the fastest-growing logistics companies in the United States, his life had become a blur of airports, conference rooms, and high-stakes negotiations. 8 months abroad had been necessary for the company's expansion, but the distance from his personal life weighed on him more heavily than any business risk. When his private jet landed at O'Hare International Airport on a cold November evening, Ethan chose not to alert his staff or security team. He wanted the return to be simple, human. He instructed his driver to take a longer route through the city instead of heading directly to the upscale neighborhood where his brownstone stood. Chicago at night had a way of grounding him, the mix of old brick buildings, flickering streetlights, and neighborhoods that told stories far removed from boardrooms and profits. As the car slowed through an aging district on the city's south side, Ethan's attention drifted to the sidewalks. People moved quickly, shoulders hunched against the cold, avoiding eye contact the way city dwellers often did. Then, near a narrow alley between two closed storefronts, something caught his eye. A woman sat on the damp concrete, her back against a graffiti-stained wall. She looked exhausted, wrapped in a thin coat that did little to protect her from the wind. There was nothing unusual about the scene at first. Chicago had no shortage of corners of forgotten people, but something about her posture made Ethan's chest tighten. "Stop the car," he said quietly. The driver hesitated but complied. As Ethan stepped out, the cold hit him sharply, but he barely noticed. He took a few slow steps toward the alley, his polished shoes echoing softly. The woman looked up, startled, her eyes guarded and tired. In the dim streetlight, her face was thinner, her features sharper, but the recognition struck him with terrifying clarity. It was Laura, his wife. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city noise seemed to fade, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed against Ethan's chest. This was not possible. Laura had been safe, comfortable, surrounded by everything money could provide. He had left her in a warm home with trusted staff and full access to their life. Laura's eyes widened slightly, then dropped to the ground. Shame crossed her face before she turned away, as if hoping he might disappear if she didn't look at him. "Laura," Ethan said, his voice unsteady despite years of commanding boardrooms and courtrooms. Saying her name out loud made the reality impossible to deny. She flinched. Ethan felt a surge of emotions he wasn't prepared for. Shock, confusion, guilt, and a deep burning fear. Questions flooded his mind. How long had she been here? Who had done this? How could something so devastating happen? Laura didn't speak as Ethan helped her into the back seat of the car. She sat rigidly, eyes fixed on the window. As the city lights slid past like a distant memory she no longer belonged to, Ethan told the driver to head toward the nearest hotel instead of home. Instinct told him that whatever had happened, the house no longer felt safe, not yet. Inside the quiet warmth of the car, the reality of her condition became impossible to ignore. Her hands were red and cracked from the cold. Her movements were cautious, almost defensive, as if she expected to be told to leave at any moment. Ethan watched her carefully, struggling to reconcile this fragile version of his wife with the composed woman who once hosted charity galas and negotiated confidently beside him at corporate events. At the hotel, Ethan arranged a private suite under a false name. Only when the door closed behind them did Laura finally break the silence. Her voice was low, measured, as if emotion had been rationed over time. "It didn't happen all at once," she said. She explained that shortly after Ethan left the country, letters began arriving, official-looking, documents claiming to be routine legal updates. Then came the phone calls. Lawyers she had never met spoke to her with polite concern, suggesting evaluations and reviews for her own protection. Bank cards stopped. Working without warning, household staff were quietly dismissed, told their services were no longer required. When Laura tried to reach Ethan, her calls failed. Emails went unanswered. She later learned that her access to shared accounts and communication systems had been restricted under the guise of cybersecurity protocols. Friends grew distant. Invitations stopped coming. Whispers followed her at social events, subtle but unmistakable. The final moment came one morning when, court-appointed, officials arrived with paperwork declaring her temporarily unfit to manage personal or financial matters. A medical report, one she insisted was false, labeled her emotionally unstable due to stress. She was escorted out of her own home with a small bag and assurances that it was only temporary. Temporary turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Laura described shelters that felt more like holding rooms, caseworkers who changed constantly, and promises that dissolved without explanation. Pride kept her from asking for help once she realized how thoroughly she had been erased from her own life. When resources ran out, the streets became the only option left. Ethan listened, fists clenched, his mind already dissecting every detail. The pattern was too precise to be random. Documents forged, accounts frozen, professional reputations manipulated. Someone with legal knowledge and access had orchestrated her removal, step by step. "You didn't do anything wrong," Ethan said quietly when she finished. "None of this is on you." Laura finally looked at him then, tears slipping down despite her effort to stay composed. "You were supposed—" Ethan moved with a precision that surprised even himself. By the next morning, the quiet hotel suite had transformed into a command center. Phones rang constantly, encrypted emails were sent, and names long buried in corporate hierarchies resurfaced with unsettling clarity. He placed Laura under the care of a private physician he trusted, someone outside his usual professional circles, while he focused on one objective: understanding exactly who had done this and how deep it went. His first call was to his general counsel, a woman known in legal circles for dismantling complex fraud cases without mercy. He didn't raise his voice or dramatize the situation. He simply laid out the facts. Within hours, she confirmed what Ethan already suspected. This was not a misunderstanding or bureaucratic error. It was a coordinated effort involving falsified medical documentation, strategic court filings, and financial manipulation, timed perfectly to coincide with Ethan's extended absence from the country. Forensic accountants followed. They traced frozen accounts, shadow trusts, and sudden shifts in authority. Patterns emerged quickly. A senior executive within Ethan's own company had quietly assumed influence far beyond his role, signing off on temporary controls and authorizing legal actions under Ethan's digital signature. The betrayal cut deep. This was someone Ethan had personally mentored, someone he had trusted to protect both the company and his family. Instead of handling the matter discreetly, Ethan made a deliberate choice. He refused to contain the damage behind closed doors. He authorized his legal team to file motions that would immediately reopen Laura's case, demanding an independent review of the medical assessments and financial restrictions placed on her. Simultaneously, he contacted federal investigators, providing full access to internal company records. If laws had been broken, and all evidence pointed to that, he wanted no shadows left to hide in. The press caught wind quickly. Rumors of a high-profile legal reversal involving a prominent CEO's wife spread through Chicago's media outlets. When asked for comment, Ethan did not deny or deflect. He confirmed the investigation with one sentence: "What happened was wrong, and it will be addressed publicly." As court orders were suspended and accounts restored, the larger picture began to surface. Lawyers who had signed off on false evaluations faced disciplinary hearings. Medical professionals who had issued questionable reports were placed under review. The executive at the center of the scheme was placed on leave, then formally charged as evidence mounted. Laura watched these events unfold from a distance, still fragile but no longer invisible. Ethan made sure she was present for every decision, every legal briefing, every step forward. This was not about rescuing her image. It was about restoring her agency. Behind the scenes, Ethan funded a legal advocacy task force dedicated to reviewing